Welcome to the whirlpool of the unsolved, where the unsolved is questioned and dissected. I'm Frank, and today's episode we will be talking about the unsolved 1982 investor massacre in Alaska. Known for its piercing, cold, and dark days, as well as fishing, filled with small towns that are close-knit. Who could ever really expect horrendous things like a massacre? People, young human beings with a whole life ahead of them, working, getting their hands dirty to bring bread onto their tables. Did they expect this outcome? Was it even a possibility? Life taken so quickly and without remorse, with the shadow of their death still hurting their loved ones. A monster that caused this pain that still lives on with no one really knowing who he is or his identity, hidden in only speculations. A case that has been closed, but should it have been? So this episode is going to be a little bit shorter than a lot of the other episodes that I've done. As you can see, I've done a few short episodes, and this is actually going to be one of them. I apologize in advance for the hiatus. A lot of things going on in a person's life, but I'm back here now, and I'm hoping that I can be more consistent than what I have been. So, like in the intro, we're going to be talking about this 1982 investor massacre that happened in Alaska. And to be honest with you, you're going to hear me talk a little bit because there isn't really much information. I looked around, I looked at some websites and stuff like that, and there wasn't much information that I found actually researching and searching, like the Wikipedia page didn't have many. I went onto its official website. They actually have a website specifically for this case, and I've looked around other cases and seen that other cases have so much more information, and this is one of the cases that didn't have as much information. If anything, there was more speculations and more theories when it came to this case than actual hard evidence. So this case is really one of those cases where there's really not much to talk about, but nonetheless, it is an intriguing case, and it's unsolved, and that's the reason why we're talking about this case. So just to kind of give you some information of location and also the boat, the investor was a fishing boat, a big one, and at the time highly technological. So this was an advanced ship at that period of time. So it was really advanced. On September 7th of 1982, this new fishing boat was found burning off the coast of Craig, Alaska. So this is where the boat was actually found. It was found off the coast of Craig, Alaska, a small city which has an estimate total area of only 9.4 square miles. So honestly, this is nothing. This is how small this city is. It is tiny. You can possibly walk the whole entire city in a day. A city that didn't house many people in general. The consensus of 2010, which I was able to find a 2010 consensus, had only about 1,201 people. So in that year of 1982, you can only imagine how many less. Like honestly, there wasn't a lot of people in 2010. I tried to find the consensus for that year, but it was hard for me to find it. And to be honest with you, just kind of looking into it, the city is extremely tiny. It's very tight knit, and it's one of those little towns where basically everybody knows everybody, and that's why um, it's shocking that something like this could occur. Just seeing something like that, it's something that you don't see normally in a place like this, in an area like this. So let's talk about what happened exactly in Craig, Alaska. Though it was a small city, something horrendous happened back on September 6th of 1982. So this happened on September 6th of 1982. A massacre that till this day hurts the people of the city as well as those close to the victims, all young with a bright future ahead of them. Even some that didn't get to live life at all. And we're talking about the kids. The investor was found burning off the coast of Craig, Alaska, like I said earlier. When investigating the burned boat, the passengers of the boat were found dead. But not just dead, but having to be killed. So not only were they burned up, but eventually they found out that they were murdered prior to the fire occurring. Due to the boat being badly burned and the bodies as well, investigators were only certain that they recovered 7 bodies, but the coroner's jury ruled that all 8 who were on board the investor had been killed. So these bodies were terribly burned. These bodies were in really bad condition, and the coroner basically found out that, in other words, they were killed before the fire even happened, before it even occurred. And it's sad to think that somebody was capable of doing this. And I'll talk a little bit about the victims in a second, but just to give you an idea, this is a very small city, a fishing city, a city that you can imagine probably in that time of 1982, had less than 1,000 people possibly that lived there, and more people that came visit for fishing reasons. Because from researching, Mark, which was the owner and one of the victims of this ship, he wasn't from Alaska. He actually traveled to Alaska for fishing. And if you don't know anything about Alaska, Alaska is very known for like salmon and stuff like that. So a lot of salmon that we get, fresh salmon and stuff like that, they come from Alaska, a lot of them. So you can only imagine that plenty of people would travel to this area just to to catch fish and be able to sell it and make their money, and it only makes sense. So this is a horrendous thing that happened in this small city, and for these 8 people to be killed and then burned, and to be honest with you, I looked in, and it doesn't say that all of them were shot. It doesn't say that all of them were shot, and I would believe that it would be hard for all of them to be shot anyways, because if it was one person that did this, let's just say, theoretically, he would have to be like a John Wick or something like that, because there is no way that one person can just go in and shoot all of them unless they were all separated and all doing something different, and they weren't close to one another, or they were all in one room and the killer shot them all one by one. And that would even be worse. But the thing is that it would be hard. I personally believe that what may have happened was he killed probably 2, 3 of them, possibly 4, which honestly I believe would be the owners and the children, and then just burnt the ship and nobody was able to actually escape it. That's my personal opinion, my personal theory, but we'll get into some of that later on. So let's go ahead and talk about the victims. Sadly, the bodies that were discovered were at least the remains were of the young owner of the boat, which, like I said earlier, was Mark. His last name was Colthurst. His pregnant wife, Irene, who both were only 28 at the time. Honestly, I'm 28 right now. I'm going to be 29. And I feel like I have a whole life ahead of me, and I'm just starting to kind of get myself together and to see that this young couple that are my age right now already had their eyes set and knew what they wanted to do, um, kind of bring me into tears because it's like you're young and you're trying to do what it is to be successful and it's taken from you. And the worst part is Irene was pregnant at the time. Along those two were both their children, sadly. Kimberly being only 5 years old and John being 4. So not only them and the unborn child, but their other two children were also sadly killed. As well as the four deckhands, Chris Heyman, who was 18, Keon, Moon, and Mike Stewart, who also lost their lives on that tragic day, were only 19 years old. They were all young and had a whole life ahead of themselves. That that kills me. To know that these are they're not even in their 20s. In the US, they're not even legally able to purchase alcohol and drink. Not saying that they probably didn't, but the thing is that they had their whole life ahead of them, and it's sad to see things like this occur. Doing these cases, it's all sad. You never want to see people have their life taken from them in any way, but it happens. The worst part of this is that these cases are still unsolved. And it's interesting, and we listen to this, and I do this because it's interesting, but nonetheless, it's sad. These late teens and early, these late 20-year-olds, this couple, and these children, their life taken abruptly and missing out on a whole life ahead of them. Now, what may have happened and led to this happening? So, after arson investigators started their investigation, they immediately suspected that the burning of the investor was not accidental. So, after investigating all of this, they acknowledged that this may not have been accidental. After researching this case has drawn a weird, eerie feeling to me, at least. So clearly, nobody really knows what happened and who did it. Only speculations and theories. That's all I could find. But from what I've read, Mark wasn't really known in Craig or recognized. In other words, like I said, this is a small town. A lot of people, come in and out of this town, especially for fishing season. He, of course, was more recognized by fellow fishermen, which goes back into, he fished and people knew him by what he did. But outside of that, he wasn't really known by the people of Craig. The things that draw me and truly make me wonder a lot about this case are clearly the days that led to his family, his crew, and himself being found. There were rumors of him possibly shipping in and out drugs. This is just a rumor. There's a lot of things when it comes to this case. Like I said, there's rumors, there's theories, there's a lot of these things. You can go online and research it. I'm not going to get into all of them. Some of them I feel like are very disrespectful, but this is one of them that kind of caught my attention a little bit more, that he may have run into some trouble in that department. So like if he was doing, if he was shipping in and out drugs, he may have run into some trouble in that department, and that would lead us to believe that this wasn't accidental. In regard to all of this, I honestly don't believe none of this was accidental, but this was one of those rumors and theories that was thrown out there. Just thought about throwing that out, kind of get your mind running a little bit. But clearly, that is only a theory. Roughly 2 years after the killing and burning of the investor, John Peel was arrested, believed to be the one who killed and set the ship on fire. Peele's first trial in 1986 hinged on circumstantial evidence and lasted over 6 months. Prosecutors suggested that he committed the murders because of a falling out he'd had with Mark. It ended in a hung jury. 2 years later, he was found not guilty in a retrial. He did sue for wrongful persecution. The truth of the matter, when it comes to this case, there are a lot of theories, like I said earlier. Well, that's like in most cases in general, but in this one, there are a lot more blanks. And that's just the truth. There's a lot more blanks in this case than any other case that I've actually read. At least there's some sort of hard evidence and, some sort of something left behind. In this case, all you have really is John Peele, and some people believe that it was multiple people on that ship that may have killed him and his crew member and then set ablaze the ship. But like I said, they're all theories, and you can see that 2 years later, after he was convicted, he was found not guilty in a retrial. So that means that they didn't really have anything to really put on this man and say that he killed those people. And that's the thing about this case. There really isn't much. I've looked around and seen little information on this case in general, mainly theories and not much hard evidence. And that's just the truth. Like I said, I look into these cases and there are substantial evidence or something that can possibly lead to some sort of conviction if the person was found. But in this case, there really isn't much. Everything was burned. The ship was burned. Anything that they may have had or could have had most likely was burned, which honestly makes this case hard to put a finger down on anything, to be very honest. But looking into it now for quite some time, I feel as though it was some sort of plot against them. From who? I have no idea. Is it possible that John Peele may have had something to do with this? Why not? From looking into the case, they did know each other, and there's a lot about them falling out. From what I've read, there is. Some believe it had to do with drugs. Others believe it had to do with work. All these things. There's so much when it comes to that. But like I said, there is no hard evidence that it may have been him. It's just hearsay at this point. Is, hey, they didn't get along. He had a reason to kill him, and all of them. But at this point, there's no evidence that he did it. So it may be possible that he planned something against them. But like I said, there was no hard evidence. And that's the truth. That's why they had found him not guilty in his retrial. It could have been jealousy that led to what happened. His ship was one of the biggest and technologically advanced ships. He invested a lot on it. It may have been a game changer that other people couldn't compete against, so other fishermen couldn't compete against. That can also lead to what had happened. Led to what had happened, meaning that somebody was jealous and seeing that this guy had this amazing ship, and they probably couldn't compete against him, and they wanted him out. It's possible. Is it like guaranteed that it happened? No, but it's possible nonetheless. I haven't really seen that theory thrown out there. Honestly, that's probably one of my own theories, but it is a theory nonetheless. The truth of the matter is, this case is still unsolved. I doubt that this case could ever be solved, unfortunately. And if it is ever solved, someone may speak up on their dying bed, on their deathbed. It's sad to see something like this happen, but this is the world that we live in. A world with plenty of unsolved cases and mysteries. And this case is one of them, with plenty of questions, still no answer, and a case that apparently is closed and unsolved, unless they reopened it from the last time that I looked into it. But with this case coming to an end, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Whirlpool of the Unsolved. Check in next week for a new episode, and make sure that you like the podcast and follow the social media pages. Instagram at Whirlpool of the Unsolved Podcast, Twitter at WO Unsolved Pod and the Facebook page.